Eric stared at the screenshot on his phone, his coffee growing cold in his hand. The geotag read, Tulum Beach Resort, Mexico, beneath his wife's Instagram story. A photo of her tanned legs stretched out on white sand. The same wife who had kissed him goodbye 3 days ago, explaining she needed a digital detox wellness retreat in Vermont. I can't reach you for the next week, honey, Marissa had said, her green eyes avoiding his. The retreat has a strict no-phone policy, but I really need this for my mental health. Now, looking at the timestamp showing the photo was posted just 2 hours ago, Eric felt something cold settle in his stomach. He zoomed in on the image. Designer sunglasses he'd never seen before. A cocktail with a little umbrella. In the background, barely visible, a man's hand resting on the arm of her beach chair. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister Clara. Saw Marissa's story. Thought she was at some yoga place in Vermont? Eric's hands trembled as he typed back. She is. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Clara was choosing her words carefully. Finally. Eric, we need to talk. 20 minutes later, Clara sat across from him in his kitchen, her expression grim. At 40, she had the same dark hair as Eric, but none of his trusting nature. Years of working as a family lawyer had taught her to spot deception from miles away. How long has she been acting strange? Clara asked, stirring honey into her tea. Eric rubbed his temples. A few months, maybe longer. She's been working late, taking calls in the other room. Last month, she forgot our anniversary dinner. Said she got caught up at the office. And you believed her? Why wouldn't I? We've been married 10 years, Clara. She's my wife. Clara pulled out her phone and showed him something else. Look at this. It was another screenshot from Marissa's Instagram, this one from her stories archive. The same beach, the same chair, but from 3 months ago. The geotag read, Secrets Resort, Tulum. She's been there before, Eric whispered. Multiple times from what I can see. Always when she told you she was somewhere else. Clara leaned forward. Eric, I think you need to consider that Marissa might be having an affair. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. I know, I keep hoping there's another explanation. Clara reached across the table and squeezed his hand. What do you want to do? Eric stared out the window at the garden he and Marissa had planted together their first spring in the house. The roses were blooming now, but she hadn't noticed. She barely noticed anything about their life anymore. I want to know the truth, he said finally. That evening, Eric sat alone in his architectural firm's conference room, pretending to review blueprints while his mind raced. His business partner, Theo, knocked and entered without waiting for permission. You look like hell, Theo said, settling into the chair across from him. At 42, Theo had the kind of weathered face that came from years of construction site visits and honest conversations. Marissa's cheating on me. The words came out flat, emotionless. Theo was quiet for a long moment. You sure? Eric showed him the screenshots. Theo studied them carefully, his expression darkening. Crap, man. I'm sorry. Theo handed the phone back. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront her when she gets back. Part of me wants to pretend I never saw this. And the other part? Eric met his friend's eyes. The other part wants to find out just how deep this goes. The next morning, Eric found himself in the office of Darren Mitchell, a private investigator Clara had recommended. The office was exactly what Eric had expected. Worn leather chairs, filing cabinets that had seen better days, and the lingering smell of coffee and cigarettes. Darren was in his 50s, with gray hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from 30 years as a police detective. He listened without judgment as Eric explained the situation. How long do you want me to follow this? Darren asked, making notes in a worn notebook. Until I know everything, Eric replied. I need to understand what I'm dealing with before I make any decisions. Understood. One thing, though, are you prepared for what I might find? In my experience, the truth is usually worse than what people suspect. Eric thought about the man's hand in the Instagram photo, about the lies Marissa had told so easily, about the way she'd stopped looking him in the eye when she spoke. I'm prepared. 3 days later, Darren called. We need to meet, and you're going to want to sit down for this. They met at a diner on the outskirts of town. Darren slid a manila folder across the table. Eric's hands shook as he opened it. The first photo showed Marissa walking hand in hand with a man Eric didn't recognize along the beach in Tulum. The man was tall, athletic, with dirty blonde hair. They were laughing about something. The second photo showed them kissing. The third showed them entering a hotel room together. His name is Jordan Hayes, Darren said quietly. 34 years old. Works in marketing for a tech startup. Been divorced for 2 years. No kids. Eric stared at the photos, feeling numb. How long? Based on what I've been able to piece together, at least 8 months, maybe longer. Darren hesitated. There's more. More? They're not just having an affair, they're making plans. I've got recordings of phone conversations where they talk about your assets, your business, even your life insurance policy. The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. Eric loosened his tie. What kind of plans? The kind where you end up with nothing and she ends up with everything. Darren pulled out another document. She's been meeting with a divorce attorney. Not to file yet, but to understand how to maximize her settlement. Eric felt sick. Jesus. There's something else. Jordan isn't exactly who he appears to be either. The tech startup he claims to work for, it doesn't exist. He's actually unemployed, living off credit cards and whatever Marissa gives him. She's been giving him money? Quite a bit, from what I can tell. There are transfers from your joint account to accounts in his name. Small amounts, but frequent. Over the past 6 months, it adds up to almost $15,000. Eric stared at the evidence spread across the table. 10 years of marriage, reduced to photographs and bank statements. What do you recommend I do? Darren leaned back in his chair. Depends on what kind of man you are. Some guys just want a clean divorce. Others want justice. What's the difference? A clean divorce means you split assets. Maybe she pays some alimony since she was taking your money, and you both move on with your lives. Justice means you make sure she faces consequences for what she's done. Eric thought about all the nights he'd worked late to build their life together, all the sacrifices he'd made, all the times he'd trusted her completely while she was planning his destruction. I want justice. Darren smiled grimly. Then we need to be smart about this, and we need to find out exactly how much she's stolen and what she's planning to do with it. Over the next week, Darren's investigation revealed the full scope of Marissa's betrayal. She had opened credit cards in Eric's name without his knowledge. She had been siphoning money from their savings account in small amounts to avoid detection. Most shocking of all, she had been secretly recording their private conversations, apparently building a case to claim emotional abuse during the divorce proceedings. She's been planning this for over a year, Darren explained as they reviewed the evidence. This isn't some spontaneous affair. This is a calculated attack on your life. Eric sat in stunned silence. The woman he'd loved and trusted for 10 years had been systematically destroying him while smiling to his face every morning. There's one more thing, Darren said. Jordan isn't working alone in this. He's got a partner. What kind of partner? A woman named Nina Caldwell. She's one of Marissa's closest friends, and she's been helping coordinate everything. The fake wellness retreat story? That was Nina's idea. She's the one who helped Marissa set up the secret bank accounts. Eric remembered Nina, a sharp-tongued woman who had never seemed to like him much. Now he understood why. So what's our next move? Darren grinned. We give them exactly what they want. We let them think their plan is working perfectly. The plan Darren outlined was elegant in its simplicity. They would let Marissa and Jordan continue their scheme while secretly documenting everything. When the time was right, they would reveal the truth in a way that would destroy not just their relationship, but their reputations and financial futures as well. The key is patience, Darren explained. Let them get comfortable. Let them make mistakes. The more evidence we gather, the better our position when this all comes to light. Eric agreed, though every fiber of his being wanted to confront Marissa immediately. Instead, he played the role of the oblivious husband when she returned from her retreat, glowing and relaxed. How was Vermont? He asked over dinner that first night back. Amazing, she said, not meeting his eyes. So peaceful. I really feel recharged. I'm glad. You seem different. Happier. She smiled, and for a moment Eric saw a flash of the woman he'd fallen in love with. Then he remembered the photos of her with Jordan, and the feeling disappeared. I've been thinking about us, Marissa continued, about our future. Oh? I think we should talk about what we both want out of life, whether we're still moving in the same direction? Eric was shocked. This was it. The beginning of the end she'd been planning. What do you mean? Just, we've both changed over the years. Maybe it's time to be honest about whether this marriage is still working for both of us. Eric forced himself to remain calm. Are you saying you want a divorce? I'm saying maybe we should consider all our options. She reached across the table and took his hand, her touch feeling like ice. I want us both to be happy, Eric, even if that means going our separate ways. That night, as Marissa slept beside him, Eric stared at the ceiling and planned his revenge. Over the next 2 weeks, Eric and Darren documented every aspect of Marissa's deception. They recorded phone calls between her and Jordan where they laughed about Eric's naivety. They photographed meetings between Marissa and Nina where they refined their strategy. Most damning of all, they discovered that Marissa had already hired a divorce attorney and was planning to file papers within the month. She's going to claim irreconcilable differences and emotional neglect, Darren explained. She's got recordings of arguments where she goaded you into raising your voice, and she's planning to use those to claim you were emotionally abusive. Eric felt a cold rage building inside him. How do we stop this? We don't stop it. We let her file, and then we destroy her case piece by piece. What do you mean? Darren smiled. I mean, we turn her own tactics against her. Every lie she's told, every piece of evidence she's manufactured, every dollar she's stolen, we document it all and present it to the judge. By the time we're done, she won't just lose the divorce case. She'll face criminal charges for fraud and theft. The plan required perfect timing. They had to wait until Marissa filed for divorce, committing herself to the lies she'd constructed. Only then could they reveal the truth, without giving her a chance to change her story. There's one more element we need to consider, Darren said during one of their planning sessions. Public humiliation. What do you mean? Your wife has been living a double life, stealing from you and planning to destroy your reputation. Don't you think the people in your life deserve to know what kind of person she really is? Eric thought about their friends, their families, their professional contacts. How many of them had Marissa already turned against him with her lies? What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that when the truth comes out, it should come out in a way that makes it impossible for her to spin or minimize. Something public, something permanent. Eric nodded slowly. He was tired of being the victim in this story. It was time to become the author of its ending. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Marissa announced that she wanted to throw a dinner party for their friends, a celebration of new beginnings. Eric recognized it for what it was, a farewell performance before she filed for divorce. That's perfect, Darren said when Eric told him. We'll make sure it's a farewell she'll never forget. The dinner party was set for a Saturday night. Marissa invited 6 couples, their closest friends, including Nina and her husband. She spent days preparing, cooking elaborate dishes, and decorating their home to perfection. This is going to be such a wonderful evening, she told Eric as she arranged flowers on Friday night. I want everyone to see how happy we are. The irony was almost too much to bear. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather. Their guests began arriving at 7, and soon the house was filled with laughter and conversation. Eric played his part perfectly, smiling and joking with friends who had no idea what was about to unfold. At 8:30, as they were finishing the main course, Eric stood up and tapped his wine glass with a knife. I'd like to make a toast, he announced. The conversation died as everyone turned to look at him. Marissa smiled up at him expectantly. To truth, Eric said, raising his glass, and to the people who deserve to know it. He nodded toward the kitchen, where Darren emerged carrying a laptop and a small projector. The private investigator began setting up the equipment without a word. Eric? Marissa's voice was suddenly uncertain. What's going on? Just sharing some vacation photos, honey. Some pictures from your wellness retreat in Vermont. The color drained from Marissa's face as the projector came to life, displaying an image on the dining room wall. But instead of Vermont forests, the screen showed a beach in Tulum. And instead of Marissa alone, it showed her in Jordan's arms. The silence in the room was deafening. What is this? Nina demanded, but her voice lacked conviction. This, Eric said calmly, is what my wife was really doing while she told me she was at a digital detox retreat. He clicked to the next image, then the next, each one more damning than the last. Eric, stop, Marissa whispered, but he continued. These photos were taken over the past 8 months, he explained to their stunned guests. During business trips that never happened. During girls' weekends that were actually romantic getaways. During wellness retreats that were really vacations with her boyfriend. You had me followed? Marissa's shock was giving way to anger. I had a cheating wife investigated. There's a difference. He clicked to a new slide. Bank statements showing the money transfers. This is where $15,000 of our money went. To support her boyfriend while he pretended to have a job. Click. Phone records. These are calls between Marissa and Jordan planning how to maximize her divorce settlement and minimize my assets. Click. Email exchanges. And these are conversations between my wife and her friend Nina, planning the lies they would tell to destroy my reputation and justify their theft. Nina stood up abruptly. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. Sit down, Nina. Eric's voice was steel. You're not going anywhere until everyone knows exactly what you helped plan. He clicked to the final slide, a recording device connected to speakers. This is a conversation between Marissa and Jordan from 3 days ago? He pressed play. Marissa's voice filled the room. He still has no idea. The poor bastard actually thinks I was at a spa. Jordan's laughter followed. How long are you going to keep this up? Just until I file next week. Then I'll take him for everything he's worth and we can disappear. What about his business? Community property? I'll get half of that too. Plus alimony since I make less than him. And if he fights it, he won't. I've got recordings of him yelling at me. My lawyer says that's enough to claim emotional abuse. You're brilliant, baby. He never saw it coming. 10 years of marriage and he never once suspected. God, he's pathetic. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. Eric looked around the table at their friends' shocked faces. Some looked angry. Others looked sick. All of them were staring at Marissa in horror. The divorce papers were supposed to be filed Monday, Eric said quietly, along with restraining order requests based on false claims of abuse. The plan was to paint me as a controlling husband who drove her away with my behavior. Marissa had gone completely white. Eric, I can explain. No. His voice cut through her words like a blade. You can't. Because there is no explanation for what you've done. There's no excuse for the lies, the theft, the betrayal. There's nothing you can say that will undo the fact that you spent months planning to destroy my life while pretending to love me. He turned to address their guests. I wanted all of you to see this because Marissa was counting on your support during the divorce. She was planning to tell you that I was abusive, that she had to leave for her own safety. She was going to use your friendship to isolate me and validate her lies. Nina finally found her voice. This is insane, Eric. You can't just, I can't what? Tell the truth? Show evidence of crimes? Hold people accountable for their actions? He clicked the projector to a new image. Legal documents. These are the charges that will be filed Monday morning. Fraud, theft, identity theft for the credit card she opened in my name, perjury for the false abuse claims she was planning to make. Marissa stood up shakily. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Marissa. You did this to yourself. Every choice you made, every lie you told, every dollar you stole, those were your decisions. I'm just making sure there are consequences. She looked around the table desperately, searching for support among their friends. But the people who had known her for years were looking at her like they'd never seen her before. Tom, she said to one of their oldest friends, Sarah, you know me. You know I would never... We know what we just saw, Tom said quietly, and what we just heard. Sarah couldn't even look at her. Nina made one last attempt to salvage the situation. This is all taken out of context. You don't understand the whole story. Eric turned the full force of his attention on her. Would you like me to play the recordings of you helping plan this? The ones where you laughed about how easy it would be to manipulate everyone? Where you called our friends useful idiots who would believe whatever story you fed them? Nina's face crumpled. Or maybe, Eric continued, you'd prefer I share the evidence of how you helped open those secret bank accounts. I'm sure your husband would be fascinated to learn about your financial crimes. Nina's husband, Dave, was staring at his wife in shock. Nina, what is he talking about? But Nina was already grabbing her purse and heading for the door. This is insane. I'm not listening to any more of this. Running away won't help, Eric called after her. The police report will be filed whether you're here or not. The front door slammed behind her. Eric turned back to Marissa, who was still standing frozen beside her chair. You should probably call a lawyer, he said conversationally. A different one than the divorce attorney you've been working with. You're going to need a criminal defense lawyer now. Eric, please. Tears were streaming down her face. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... No. The finality in his voice stopped her mid-sentence. We can't work this out. You can't steal from someone and lie to them for months and then ask for counseling. You can't plan to destroy someone's life and then claim you want to save the marriage. He gestured to their guests, most of whom were beginning to gather their things. Everyone here has seen exactly who you are now. The lies, the manipulation, the complete lack of remorse for what you've done, there's no coming back from this. One by one, their friends filed out of the house. Some offered Eric awkward condolences. Others just left quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Within 15 minutes, Eric and Marissa were alone. She slumped back into her chair, finally understanding that her carefully constructed plan had completely collapsed. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now you face the consequences of your choices. You'll be arrested Monday morning. You'll be prosecuted for fraud and theft. You'll probably go to prison. And us." Eric almost laughed. "There is no us, Marissa. There hasn't been for months. The only difference is that now I know it." She looked around the dining room, at the flowers she'd arranged, the dishes she'd prepared, the evidence of the life she'd been planning to destroy. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. "Yes, you did. That's exactly what you meant. You planned every detail, calculated every angle. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught." He began collecting the dishes from the table, his movements calm and deliberate. "You can stay in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow you can pack your things and leave. After that, any communication goes through lawyers." Marissa watched him clear the table as if nothing had happened. "Eric? What? Do you hate me?" He paused, considering the question seriously. "No," he said finally. "I don't hate you. I don't feel anything for you at all anymore. And that's probably the saddest part of this whole thing." Monday morning came faster than Marissa had expected. She woke to the sound of car doors slamming in the driveway. Through the window, she could see 2 police officers walking toward the front door. Eric answered before they could knock. "Eric Thompson? We have a warrant for the arrest of Marissa Thompson. She's in the guest room upstairs." "I'll get her." Marissa was already dressed and waiting when Eric appeared in the doorway. "It's time," he said simply. She nodded and followed him downstairs. The police officers were professional but firm as they read her rights and explained the charges. Fraud in the first degree, grand theft, identity theft. Each charge carried potential prison time. As they led her to the patrol car, Marissa turned back one last time. "Eric, I'm sorry. I really am." He stood in the doorway of the house they'd shared for 10 years, watching the woman he'd loved destroy herself with her own choices. "I know you are," he said, "but sorry doesn't undo what you did." The patrol car pulled away, and Eric went back inside to begin rebuilding his life. 3 months later, Eric sat in his lawyer's office, reviewing the final divorce settlement. Marissa had pled guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She would serve 18 months in prison and pay full restitution for the money she'd stolen. "She gets nothing," his lawyer explained. "No alimony, no share of the business, no claim to the house. Her criminal actions voided any rights she might have had to marital assets." Eric nodded. It was over. That evening, Theo stopped by the house with dinner and beer. "How are you holding up?" his friend asked as they sat on the back porch. Eric looked out at the garden where the roses were blooming again. This time, he was able to appreciate their beauty. "Better than I expected," he said honestly. "It's strange. I thought I'd feel angry or sad or something. But mostly I just feel free. No regrets about how you handled it?" Eric considered the question. "No, she made her choices and I made mine. I could have confronted her privately, worked out some quiet divorce settlement, let her walk away with half of everything I'd worked for. But that wouldn't have been justice. That would have just enabled her to do the same thing to someone else." Theo raised his beer. "To justice, then." "To truth," Eric corrected, clinking bottles with his friend. As the sun set over the garden, Eric felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The woman who had tried to destroy him was facing the consequences of her actions. The friends who had been willing to enable her lies had been exposed. And he was free to build a new life based on honesty and trust. It wasn't the ending he'd planned when he married Marissa 10 years ago, but it was the ending he deserved. Jordan, it turned out, had disappeared the night of the dinner party. Darren's investigation revealed that his real name was Jake Morrison, and he had a history of targeting married women in elaborate financial scams. The FBI was now investigating him for fraud in 3 other states. Nina had been arrested 2 weeks after Marissa for her role in the scheme. Her marriage hadn't survived the scandal, and she was facing her own criminal charges. The ripple effects of that Saturday night dinner party continued to spread through their social circle. Other couples found themselves examining their own relationships more carefully. Several people reached out to Eric to apologize for not seeing the signs, for being so easily manipulated by Marissa's lies. "You couldn't have known," Eric told them. "She was very good at what she did. The only reason I found out was because I got suspicious about the wrong vacation destination." On a quiet Sunday morning, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Eric was working in his garden when Clara stopped by with coffee and pastries. "You look good," she said, settling into one of the patio chairs. "Relaxed? I feel good. Better than I have in years, actually." "Any regrets?" Eric considered the question while he deadheaded the roses. "About the marriage? No. About how I handled things? No. The only regret I have is that I didn't trust my instincts sooner." "What do you mean?" "There were signs, Clara. Small things that didn't seem important at the time. The way she started being secretive about her phone. How she stopped talking about our future together. The way she seemed to lose interest in everything we'd built." He stood up and brushed dirt from his hands. "I told myself I was being paranoid. I convinced myself that questioning her would make me a bad husband. I was so afraid of not trusting her that I ignored all the reasons I should have." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "What would you do differently?" "I'd trust myself. I'd ask the hard questions. I'd rather risk hurting someone's feelings than risk being completely destroyed by their lies." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the morning sun and the smell of roses. "Any thoughts about dating again?" Clara asked eventually. Eric laughed. "Not yet. I'm still learning how to trust my own judgment again, but someday, yeah. When I meet someone who values honesty as much as I do. And when you do? When I do, I'll know that whatever we build together will be real. Because I'll never again mistake someone's ability to lie convincingly for love." As Clara gathered her things to leave, she paused at the garden gate. "Eric?" "Yeah?" "I'm proud of you, for how you handled all of this, for standing up for yourself, for making sure there were consequences." Eric smiled. "Thanks. That means a lot." After she left, Eric went back to his gardening. The roses were thriving this year, better than they ever had when Marissa lived there. Maybe it was because he was finally paying attention to them, or maybe it was because the soil was no longer poisoned by lies. Either way, they were beautiful. As he worked, Eric thought about the dinner party that had changed everything. Sometimes he wondered what would have happened if he had never seen that Instagram post, if Clara had never sent that screenshot. Would Marissa have followed through with her plan? Would he have found himself divorced, broke, and branded as an abuser based on manufactured evidence? The thought was chilling, but it was also motivating, because now he knew that he was capable of fighting for himself. He was capable of seeking truth and demanding justice. He was capable of surviving betrayal and coming out stronger on the other side. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Eric continued working in his garden. Somewhere across town, Marissa was serving her sentence, learning to live with the consequences of her choices. Jordan, or Jake, or whatever his real name was probably running some new scam on some other unsuspecting victim. But Eric was here in his garden, surrounded by beauty he had created and protected. He was free, he was whole, and he was ready for whatever came next. The roses bloomed around him, silent witnesses to his victory over those who had tried to destroy him. And in their beauty, Eric found the promise of new beginnings built on truth rather than lies.